May is definitely the month of iris. And when we go shopping for iris, we really would like to know how to select a plant that's going to give us the life of bloom and a very easy to grow flowers. So I'm going to ask Lionel Austell. Lionel is well known for his expertise in iris and many other plants, but today, Lionel, I'd like for you to help me select, in your opinion, the top 5 iris according to their performance in the home garden.
Well, of course, it's hard for a hybridizer like me to do that, but let's just pick a few of the best and all. For instance, for a blue, we have Yakina Blue. In the iris world, there is one iris each year that wins the award as the best iris in the world. And that iris gets the Dykes Medal, and Yakina Blue won the Dykes Medal. This is both a great iris because it has a very large, beautiful, true blue bloom, but also it has good branching, and it, in many cases, like for instance the stem over there, has 4 branches plus a terminal on it. That means you're going to get anywhere from 8 to 10 or 12 blooms. And it also puts its blooms, as you will notice, one at a time on the stem. That way it's spread over a long period of time, and that's one of the things you want to happen with an iris that you buy for the garden. Now, if you want to buy it for a iris show, you want an iris that blooms all at once. But for the iris garden, you want it to spread over a 3 or 4 week period of time. And if they spread out those blooms one at a time, well, then they will do that.
I can spot this iris from a distance and know why I love it.
Gypsy Lord. It was hybridized by Keith Kipple of Oregon, one of the world's greatest hybridizers. And as you can see, it's an extremely large, very beautiful iris, has tremendous substance in the petals so that it stands up real well despite its enormous size, and has very good branching so that despite the size, it ends up having your 7 to 8 or so buds on it, which means that you're going to have a good long season. It also has a tendency every now and then to put several blooms at the same time, which makes it a very good iris to take to an iris show.
And I think it definitely showcases why it's called a bearded iris, the beard being the red.
The beard being the red. In this case, it's a tangerine red. And irises, that's the only place that a tall bearded iris does get actually red, fire engine red in it, is in the beard sometimes. Louisa's song, as you can see, is slightly shorter in stalk. That way the wind does not blow it over. It doesn't flop all over the place. It has very good branching, and it has extreme ruffles, very wide petals, laced petals also, and it passes those on to its children, in which many have been introduced, both by Barry Blythe, the creator of it, and by other people who have used it in their hybridizing. And I'm using it some in my hybridizing now, trying to cross it with different irises than he crossed it with, so that you will get more unique and totally different creations, because you're always looking for something different than what's already out there.
You know what I like about it? It looks so much like a beautiful orchid, and I think that iris remind people of orchids, especially in the coloring, and that is just scrumptious.
I think the iris, which is the rainbow flower, has been compared to the orchid many times. It does not last near as long, but it's also not as expensive, not as hard to raise. Actually, irises are not hard to raise at all if you just follow a few basic principles.
Now, what's choice number 4?
Well, let's go to something that is in the yellow class right up there. That's all, folks.
Oh, wow. Lionel, I know you've got something interesting to tell me about. That's all, folks.
Well, the hybridizer, Marriott, was one of the great hybridizers and hybridized irises for many years, but he finally decided it was time for him to stop introducing tall bearded irises, and so his final iris was That's All, Folks, which he said he saved the best for last. And it's an enormous, this is the final bloom on, it's been blooming now for 3 weeks, and as you can see from the seed pods, I've hybridized it a little bit because it is a very good hybridizing iris. And it is enormous bloom, very large, very good substance. And you want good substance in a bloom of an iris, because that way it'll last for the full 3 days before it starts collapsing and closing up. Because a tall-bearded iris, or any of your bearded irises, normally last in bloom form, or should last for 3 days if they have enough substance, and then they start closing up at the end of 3 days.
Well, you know, I think the clarity of the yellow in that is equal to that of a daffodil. It's just so brilliant and clear.
One thing about the iris flower is all of the colors in the rainbow except the fire engine red, it gets as well as any flower out there.
Wow.
It will do black as well. No flower is totally black, but it's almost black. It will do blue better than almost any flower. It does almost all the colors, except we're still working on that fire engine red, which we haven't got yet.
I think we've come to selection number 5.
In Swingtown. Swingtown is probably one of my favorite irises in the whole world. When I started in 1996 growing irises again, I ordered a small group from Shriners, and they sent me as a freebie Swingtown, along with that small group of not very expensive or anything that I ordered from them. And it was introduced brand new that year on their catalog. I saw it about 6 years ago when I was at the National Convention in Denver, Colorado, out in Long's Garden. It was pouring down rain. Every iris there looked like someone had dumped a bucket of water over their heads, and they were almost wilting. But Swingtown was standing just like it is today, with the rain just rolling off of it, paying no attention, with the big heavy stalks, with the mini buds, with its very long season.
Lionel, I'm really interested in knowing how to groom and take care and maintain the iris. Could you help us with that?
All right, of course, in a hybridized garden like mine, you don't see much grooming, but in a garden where you only have a few dozen irises, you do want to groom them. And to groom them as the bloom begins to fade and begins to fold up, what you want to do is go out and trim it off with the clippers. Here, I'll do another one so you can see it even better. And you go down and you trim it off, and that way you don't snap the whole thing off, and if there's another bud in there, you don't take the other bud away. You leave it there so that it can bloom. And you do that with all of them. Now, normally you would have done it each time as they came.
If you didn't have a few thousand.
If you didn't have about 25,000
Right.
to worry about, you would. Irises normally want at least a half a day of sun, so when you select the spot where you're going to plant your irises, put them in a spot that has at least a half a day's sun. Of course, they love a full day of sun, but they will bloom well in a half a day of sun. When you plant the iris, you will normally get it as a rhizome with a fan that has been cut back into a V shape, and it's been out of the ground for some time. Once an iris is taken out of the ground, the roots on that iris are no longer any good. So it's got to grow all new roots. So you take that rhizome and you take it to the ground and you plant it, and if you can see down in here, you will notice these rhizomes, the top of them are above the ground. You want to plant it so that that top ridge of the rhizome is above the ground, and during the first few weeks after you plant the iris, you want to water it, because until it grows new roots, it has no way of getting water otherwise. So you need to water it until a few new fans start coming up. Soon as new fans coming up, forget it. The iris is a drought-tolerant flower. It can exist and take care of itself from then on.
That's a good plus, isn't it?
As far as getting the irises to bloom real well for you, if you plant them in good soil, they will do fairly good for a year or two anyway. But they do need fertilizer. A lot of people think irises don't need fertilizer, and that's not true. Irises, like any other flower, has to have some fertilizer in order to grow and to develop new blooms for the next year and everything, and have real good bloom.
Less nitrogen and more phosphate.
Less nitrogen, more phosphate. In other words, 6-12-12 is an excellent fertilizer to use, and you put that on early in the spring, and then after they finish blooming, put a little on again, because they then have to put on their increase for next year, and they set their bloom for next year in those increases, so that you get next year's bloom. If you don't give them something those 2 times, you may not get bloom every year out of your iris.
Well, have us get this unsightly stalk out. How would you do that?
Okay, now, after your iris finished blooming, it's a very smart thing to do is to remove the bloom stalks. They will usually just snap off. But you can take them and take them down low and just twist them, and they snap off right even with the ground. You're even there. And what you've done is you've prevented rot from going into your iris, because this stalk is just literally full of water and all, and there's just water all over it and in it. And that as it begins to die and dry up, that water goes down to the rhizome and will start rot in the rhizome sometimes if you don't snap them off.
So does it run down in here, or it's inside
the stalk?
the stalk?
It's inside. It's full of the stalk is full of all that pulp. That liquid is how it took its food up to get those flowers to bloom.
Well, you've just given us so many amazing tips, and it's quite obvious that you are an exceptional grower. Your knowledge of iris and what to do with them, but most of all, you're so generous with what you have in both your iris and your roses. So the time you've taken today was well spent. Thank you.